Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of our van build. In this episode we are finally laying the flooring, getting the timber frame all installed. One thing that we forgot to do before we started this was to insulate the wheel arches, so we ended up doing this halfway through. I would recommend that you do it beforehand because it just makes things a lot easier. So without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy the video. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting a small bead of Sikaflex Amis on every raised portion of the van floor. What this is going to do is help adhere the timber to the floor and stop any unexpected movement. It's also worth pointing out that if you are placing a piece of timber that is going to have a visible edge, make sure that any knots on the wood are facing in the opposite direction so you're not going to see them. The two important things to know when fixing the floor to the van. Number one is check where you're drilling the holes, so where they'll be on the underneath of the van. You don't want to be drilling through anything important, like brake lines or anything like that, or the fuel tank is a big one. The second thing is use the right fixings. I use light duty metal, countersunk self-drilling 40mm screws. These I found were the best thing to hold the floor. You want something that is rated for outdoor use as well because it's going to get wet from the underside of the van. Right, so what I'm going to do to measure the length across the wheel gauge, usually I'd say use a measuring tape, like a sewing tape. I can't find one at the moment, so what I've done is I've got a piece of string, I've just put a knot in the end here, so I'm just simply going to hold from one side to the other, like so. And then I've got my measuring tape laid out on the ground, and so I can get the measurements. So I'll be going across this way, and then once again along this way, and keeping the string tight but not too tight, and we'll get the measurements for the wheel arches that way. This next part, find someone that is good at wrapping presents or gifts and that has a lot of patience. Unfortunately that's not me, so thankfully my lovely wife stepped in and did this for me. Now this is a time lapse of us installing about 90% of the flooring. It was shot over about 3 hours. One thing to point out is it is quite important in this time lapse and will be very useful for some of you wishing to do a van build in a Mercedes Sprinter, is at some point you'll see me mark a section of the floor using blue masking tape. Now that section of the floor points out where the fuel tank in a right-hand drive Mercedes Sprinter is. I don't know if the fuel tank's on the opposite side for a left-hand drive, so that's why I'm pointing that out. But in that area I could not work out how close the fuel tank sits to the floor of the van, so there was a section of where the fuel tank is where I could only glue the timber down and not screw it down because I didn't want to take the risk of drilling into the fuel tank. So I just thought that was very important to point out. And this is a very long process, 3 hours. It's a lot of cutting and measuring and bits and pieces, but it goes pretty quickly. So that's the wheel arches all insulated and the timber framing for the floor all installed. The next part we're on to is insulating the floor. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to click the thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching.